In the somber darkness of Jerusalem's temple, wails echo through the swirling haze of precious incense. Not cries of parting, but of misguided faith in Tammuz, a foreign god worshipped to excess. Amid the anguished throng, women kneel before Tammuz's idol, their eyes brimming with fragile hope, as if they could summon back their lost husbands and sons. Yet the untold story behind each tear is not just one of error, but a journey toward grace and redemption. Will those yearning hearts glimpse the light of true faith amid their delusion? Today we'll uncover the courage and wisdom of a woman who dared to rise, guiding her people back to divine justice. Prepare to step into this deeply moving tale. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more untold stories of women in the Bible. Beneath the harsh sun of ancient Jerusalem, where time-worn stone walls stood sentinel, the holy city seemed to hold its breath amid an unspoken, smoldering sorrow. Gone were the vendors' cries, the bustling hum of markets, replaced by the heavy footsteps of women trudging toward the temple courtyard. The air was thick with the swirling scent of incense and whispered prayers, blending into a resonant yet somber chorus. Among the bowed figures, Miriam shone like a quiet beacon, a young widow, her face etched with hardship, eyes brimming with tears but burning with restless resolve. Miriam had once been an ordinary woman, living simple, joyful days beside her gentle husband, sharing every patch of earth, every labored breath. Her prudent life was built on humility and unshakable faith in God. But when cruel fate stole her husband, Miriam plummeted into despair's abyss. The agony of loss nearly broke her, convincing her only a miracle could bring him back. In her heart's ruin, the soothing promises of foreign priests slipped into her mind. They vowed that devout worship of Tammuz could resurrect her husband, restore life to all things. Slowly, the echo of her old faith faded, replaced by hazy visions of Tammuz, a supernatural being said to defy the boundary between life and death. In the temple courtyard, wooden and stone idols of Tammuz loomed with cryptic allure, silently reigning. Women, each bearing a private tale of grief, knelt before them, frail hands raised, grasping at invisible hope. In that gloomy scene, sweat traced paths down Miriam's face. She felt the labored breaths of those around her, but only her own sobs seemed to echo endlessly within. Glancing around, she saw other women, widows, mothers, sisters, who, after losing husbands or children, sought Tammuz as salvation. They craved miracles but found only deeper deception. Incense smoke drifted like a misty veil, half shrouding her form. Tiny candles flickered in the descending night, their frail light casting shadows on the mournful faces of mothers, wives, and sisters pleading desperately. Chanted prayers droned ceaselessly, yet brought no true peace. They were mere reminders that here, faith had strayed from truth. Miriam's heart raced, each beat more frantic, torn between memories of tranquil days and the growing dread of Tammuz's grip. In a shadowed corner, another woman, Elizabeth, watched the crowd silently. Her gaunt frame moved slowly, but her eyes radiated steadfast resolve. Few knew much of her. Only close kin understood that God had blessed her with profound wisdom and keen insight. Through countless nights, she'd quietly absorbed Miriam's anguished cries, the piercing sighs of others sharing her plight. She knew Miriam's pain stemmed from an overwhelming longing, a fear of a meaningless life without her husband. That same fear had driven her to cling to a false hope. Elizabeth stepped into the stillness, her mind far from calm. She saw Miriam's gaze fixed on Tammuz's idol, tears mingling with mystic smoke. She recognized the torment consuming her, a fire eroding her primal faith. Elizabeth understood. Without a guiding hand, Miriam would wander forever in delusion's maze. And across Jerusalem, countless souls teetered like her, swayed by fear of death and a yearning for revival, lost in their course. The temple's air grew heavier as Elizabeth approached Miriam. Her silhouette rose through the incense haze, not to condemn Miriam's errant faith with harsh words, but to kindle a different warmth, the warmth of true hope. She spoke no public decree, sought no attention. Instead, she offered a silent bond, a gentle signal rising like a violin's note amid the chaotic throng. Her silver hair swayed in the breeze, making candles flicker, their light dancing on her wrinkled brow, her eyes still sharp. In her mind echoed a conviction. The Lord has not forsaken those who seek him, no matter how far they've strayed. Beside Miriam, Elizabeth noted every subtle shift. Her face tightened, eyes blinked rapidly, then sparked with fleeting hope, recalling sermons that stirred her soul. Miriam believed Tammuz's promises of resurrection were true, but deep within, a fragile thread remained unbroken. Memories of her husband in bygone sunsets, his hearty laugh, their prayers to God. She suddenly recalled days when she and her husband dined under a small awning, watching doves soar, trusting love and faith would sustain them. Death had dimmed that image, but not erased her core belief. As thick incense coiled around the walls, embers of myrrh drifted to the cold stone floor. Miriam's heart skipped a beat. She realized pain often leads to false miracles. Her eyes lingered on Tammuz's idol, but her heart reached for a higher power. An unseen force Elizabeth trusted still welcomed every soul. Yet finding it was no simple feat. It demanded wrestling between hollow hopes and stark truth. Miriam's steps carried her toward a cluster of lush trees shading a corner of the courtyard. Leaves rustled in the breeze, a stark contrast to the temple's central tumult. Here, beneath the cool canopy, chants and gasps echoed around her. Her heart churned like a hidden tide. She recalled not long ago when her husband lived, how they knelt together under moonlight, praying for bountiful harvests and peace. Back then, her faith was pure, untainted, undemanding. She saw now that fear had conquered her, leading her to wager on illusion over the truth she once held. In that moment, Elizabeth stood silently by her side. She said nothing, but her calm presence spoke. "I will guide you." The wind stirred the leaves, weaving a tender melody. The incense's scent softened, yielding to faint traces of acacia, as if heralding the light of truth seeping into Miriam's heart. She heard a whisper within, "Return." But to truly return, she'd need to release her false faith, face her raw grief, and summon courage to move forward. Darkness lingered, yet a faint glow beckoned. Amid the temple's gloom and layered smoke, Miriam realized salvation didn't spring from prayers to wood or stone, but from a heart's quiet call, a call only the brave could hear, leading them home. Through the ancient dome's arched windows, dawn's light crept in, illuminating Miriam's sun-bronzed face and Elizabeth's steadfast gaze. Jerusalem remained cloaked in solemn hush, but in the tree-shaded courtyard corner, a new hope began to sprout. The young widow stood there, her eyes no longer fixed on Tammuz's idol, but gazing toward the distant horizon, where she believed an unseen mighty power awaited every sinner's return. In that moment, in the Holy Land, a wayward life stood poised to begin anew, fueled by the courage to face truth and seek the light of true faith. As night waned and chance fell silent, Miriam knew the road ahead would be stormy, but she was no longer wholly lost. Down in Jerusalem's heart, Elizabeth's whisper echoed, "The Lord still waits for you," like a summons to a new journey, a quest to reclaim faith, conquer fear, and sail toward the shores of redemption. Beside Miriam, Elizabeth noted every subtle shift. Her face tightened, eyes blinked rapidly, then sparked with fleeting hope, recalling sermons that stirred her soul. Miriam believed Tammuz's promises of resurrection were true, but deep within, a fragile thread remained unbroken. Memories of her husband in bygone sunsets, his hearty laugh, their prayers to God. She suddenly recalled days when she and her husband dined under a small awning, watching doves soar, trusting love and faith would sustain them. Death had dimmed that image, but not erased her core belief. As thick incense coiled around the walls, embers of myrrh drifted to the cold stone floor. Miriam's heart skipped a beat. She realized pain often leads to false miracles. Her eyes lingered on Tammuz's idol, but her heart reached for a higher power. An unseen force Elizabeth trusted still welcomed every soul. Yet finding it was no simple feat. It demanded wrestling between hollow hopes and stark truth. Miriam's steps carried her toward a cluster of lush trees shading a corner of the courtyard. Leaves rustled in the breeze, a stark contrast to the temple's central tumult. Here, beneath the cool canopy, chants and gasps echoed around her. Her heart churned like a hidden tide. She recalled not long ago when her husband lived, how they knelt together under moonlight, praying for bountiful harvests and peace. Back then, her faith was pure, untainted, undemanding. She saw now that fear had conquered her, leading her to wager on illusion over the truth she once held. In that moment, Elizabeth stood silently by her side. She said nothing, but her calm presence spoke. "I will guide you." The wind stirred the leaves, weaving a tender melody. The incense's scent softened, yielding to faint traces of acacia, as if heralding the light of truth seeping into Miriam's heart. She heard a whisper within, "Return." But to truly return, she'd need to release her false faith, face her raw grief, and summon courage to move forward. Darkness lingered, yet a faint glow beckoned. Amid the temple's gloom and layered smoke, Miriam realized salvation didn't spring from prayers to wood or stone, but from a heart's quiet call, a call only the brave could hear, leading them home. Through the ancient dome's arched windows, dawn's light crept in, illuminating Miriam's sun-bronzed face and Elizabeth's steadfast gaze. Jerusalem remained cloaked in solemn hush, but in the tree-shaded courtyard corner, a new hope began to sprout. The young widow stood there, her eyes no longer fixed on Tammuz's idol, but gazing toward the distant horizon, where she believed an unseen mighty power awaited every sinner's return. In that moment, in the Holy Land, a wayward life stood poised to begin anew, fueled by the courage to face truth and seek the light of true faith. As night waned and chance fell silent, Miriam knew the road ahead would be stormy, but she was no longer wholly lost. Down in Jerusalem's heart, Elizabeth's whisper echoed, "The Lord still waits for you," like a summons to a new journey, a quest to reclaim faith, conquer fear, and sail toward the shores of redemption. At dawn's first light, Miriam awoke in her quiet tent. Faint sun rays pierced the roof's gaps, painting golden streaks across her face. Something profound had shifted within. Though fear still weighed heavy, she knew only one path lay ahead: to face the truth, even if it meant leaving the community she'd leaned on, stepping beyond the false safety Tammuz promised. Yet the cost of living authentically could strip her of the life she'd relied on. A widow alone, with nowhere to turn. In her mind, images lingered of foreign priests brandishing ancient scrolls, vowing that fervent prayers would compel Tammuz to overturn graves, restoring her husband. Now, through fading incense and the frenzied crowd, she saw those promises as ploys preying on vulnerable hearts. She recalled the warmth of her husband's embrace, his whispered encouragements of love and faith in God. Those memories became a catalyst, urging her to reclaim the true path. As thoughts swirled, a faint new faith emerged, not in stone idols, but in a call from the Most High. She vowed only true belief could sustain her, not illusions of reviving the dead through lifeless forms. This marked a turning point in her soul's growth, from a woman swayed by grief to one ready to face reality, however harsh. But reaching that light wasn't instant. The fear of losing her community, the shield of shared sorrow, held firm. She thought of the women weeping before Tammuz, their tears not just personal, but a collective hope. They relied on each other, bound by mutual loss. Abandoning that could mean solitude, mockery, or even exile from the city. For anyone, that might give pause. For Miriam, a widow steeped in loneliness, the risk felt like a death sentence, both spiritual and physical. Her inner conflict peaked as she stood in the temple, gazing at Tammuz's idol. Its gold-painted eyes dim, smile frozen, hands inert. Then glancing at the mossy, ancient walls, etched with tales of her people's true faith, she questioned herself. Could Tammuz rival the God she once revered? Were the priest's deceitful sermons worth her trust? Above all, she knew each moment's hesitation fed her delusion, pushing the path to true light further away. Tragedy and hope wove a complex tapestry within. The image of her kneeling before Tammuz, tears pleading for miracles, had transformed. Memories of her lost husband, shared sunsets, and simple vows that God would guide them flooded back, stirring her resolve. She could no longer stand idle. She felt the need to rise, to choose, stay in delusion's maze, or step out to reclaim true faith. This wasn't just a clash with Tammuz, but a battle between her primal hope's light and deception's shadow. As dawn glowed vibrantly, Miriam lingered alone in the courtyard. She prayed silently, not to Tammuz, but to rediscover faith in the unseen God. A gentle breeze swept through, thinning lingering incense, as if carrying a quiet omen tangled in her hair. In that moment, she believed it was time to choose truth's path, though fraught with thorns and trials. The initial fierce conflict had sparked a first light, hinting at a new way to live, born of courage to overcome fear and false belief. From that tense scene, Miriam's story continued gliding toward true light, Amid ancient echoes and incense haze, she closed her eyes, hands clasped at her heart, vowing not to lose herself. She knew the road ahead would be turbulent, but she was no longer wholly lost. The resilient heart of a humble widow began to open, ready for a journey harder than ever, from darkness back to authentic light. In that instant, Jerusalem held his breath, awaiting Miriam's next step, and Elizabeth's prophetic whisper lingered, "Return to your source," a gentle yet mighty summons, guiding her onward through the crossroads of hope and truth. In the somber veil of night, God still quietly heated anguished hearts. From the moment Elizabeth cast her compassionate gaze on Miriam, a spark of hope kindled new flames in the young widow's soul. One starry night, as Jerusalem sank into stillness, the two women met by a stream beyond the ancient city walls, where only the gentle trickle of water and rustling leaves filled the air. Silver moonlight spilled across the surface, weaving shimmering streaks, crafting a world half dream, half real. By the stream's edge, Miriam felt the night's chill seep into her chest, yet a strange warmth surged within, as if a divine power beckoned her. Elizabeth, bearer of a sacred mission, needed no ornate words or ritual prayers. She clasped Miriam's hand tightly, imparting comfort deeper than any sermon. In the dim glow, Miriam saw serenity etched on Elizabeth's face, a spiritual harbor amid the storm. For so long, Miriam had believed every escape was sealed, her faith reduced to guilt and despair. That night, Elizabeth guided her from the void's labyrinth, drawing her closer to the Most High's promise that false vows would crumble before true faith's light. The stream flowed quietly, light breezes playing on its surface, creating ripples that mirrored the moon's gleam. Miriam's silhouette leaned by the bank, her eyes fixed on the void, yet her soul seemed to pierce unseen barriers, seeking new strength. Once she'd pinned hopes on Tammuz's rituals, yearning for a miracle to restore her husband. Now, under the mystic moonlight, she began to see life wasn't tethered to visible miracles, but an inner journey, releasing lies to embrace the pure love of an unseen God. In Miriam's heart, tales of courageous women echoed faintly, like whispered encouragement. Elizabeth had shared stories of Deborah, the prophetess who led Israel through peril and chaos. Deborah feared neither battlefield dangers nor political schemes. Her boundless heart and wise gaze guided her people past despair to justice and righteousness. And there was Hagar, a servant adrift in a dark society whose steadfast faith and loyalty brought solace to the hopeless. These stories, like cool breezes in a parched world, urged Miriam to believe life didn't end with her husband's death. It was a chance to find deeper, lasting meaning beyond fleeting hopes of bodily resurrection. From that moment, resolve sharpened in Miriam's anguished eyes. She refused to remain a pawn of hollow promises, exploited to enrich foreign priests. A small but daunting act took root in her, to uncover the truth behind superstition's veil, peeling back layers of deceit and lies. As night wove a smooth black tapestry, Miriam quietly left the stream, stepping toward the city through thick darkness. She knew she was risking everything, abandoning false faith, facing the loss of her community's shield, and the peril of wandering homeless in the cold night. With a hunched frame, Miriam slipped through deserted alleys, each step nearing the temple. There, foreign priests performed their charade day and night, preying on widows' grief, amassing offerings. They use gongs, eerie chants, and flamboyant rites to blind the masses and silence dissent. Hidden in shadow, Miriam watched their every move, from collecting gold to doling out petty coins to quell suspicion. She realized only solid proof could strike at deception's core, stirring hearts craving truth. One stormy night, as rain pattered on leaves, Miriam learned the head priest, master of a vast network, would attend a secret rite. She took a hidden path, scaling a small awning to reach his office, where records of offerings and profits were kept. Rain lashed the window, dimming the room, lit only by a timid candle's flicker. Miriam waited patiently until the priest appeared, clutching a scroll glinting faintly. No words were needed. His furtive sorting of coin sacks revealed greed's grip on the temple. A ledger of offerings sat neatly on a shelf beside a chest of gold and silver. In a flash, Miriam seized the ledger and fled through the small window, leaving the priest unaware of his missing treasure. Rain and wind cloaked the courtyard, but Miriam stood unshaken. She melted into the dark, breaths quick, heart racing, yet her eyes blazed with newfound faith. With proof in hand, she could expose those claiming divine messages. She began sharing whispers with other women, those who'd knelt without choice, planting seeds of truth, awaiting their bloom. Within a week, under a torrential midnight downpour, Miriam chose to confront the head priest. In the faint glow of a wavering lamp, she faced him, her expression a mix of resolve and righteous anger. She placed the ledger on an old wooden table, revealing glaring figures, the vast gold and silver wrung from grieving women's tears. The priest, stunned by her audacity, faltered. His eyes betrayed panic despite his efforts to hide it. The room seemed to pulse with a strange energy, the candle's flame flaring briefly. He snarled, snatching the ledger, but Miriam stood fearless. With a fierce gaze and a faint, urging smile, she made him tremble, forcing a temporary retreat. In that instant, a miraculous light flared from the temple, dispelling the oppressive gloom. The courtyard's stones gleamed with an unfamiliar golden hue, as if a higher power affirmed sacred justice's enduring strength. The sight terrified the priest, who fled in dread, leaving a sudden hush amid the storm. That moment proved to Miriam she was on the right path, not one of violence or sharp words, but of truth nourishing blinded hearts. From then, the temple's dark power could no longer conceal its cruel schemes. Miriam, a small torch, began illuminating fragile souls. She shared her journey with surrounding women, revealing evidence of greed and lies. Each word she spoke carried unwavering faith, stirring tearful doubts in her listeners. Tears of remorse welled, sighs of repentance echoed in a temple once silenced by covert decrees. Yet Miriam knew the true culprits still lurked behind high walls. The foreign priests, with deep cunning and power, wouldn't easily yield to a frail-looking widow, bold and brave in spirit. They secretly plotted to eliminate Miriam and Elizabeth, aiming to snuff out the flame of truth they kindled. Rumors of curses and punishment spread, causing many women to hesitate before joining the two who dared challenge false beliefs. But darkness never triumphs over light. In the bleak void, Miriam's words pierced like arrows, sowing hope in wavering hearts. Her courage under dim lamps and raging storms rose above the wicked's threats. No longer a weak widow, She became a symbol of faith and wisdom, guiding a fractured community to grasp the value of true love and God's redemptive power. The story doesn't end, for shadows of power still linger, poised to strike back. But Miriam knew reclaiming faith wasn't a solitary act. It was a call for an entire nation. Each step she took left radiant marks, affirming that, however thick the night, truth's light could shatter any chain, offering hope to the most anguished souls. The fateful day finally dawned, carrying a tense, electric anticipation that hung over Jerusalem. Before the majestic temple, the vast plaza, once hushed at dawn, transformed into an arena of chaotic sounds. Early sunlight flooded the stifling air, illuminating weary, strained faces as women and men gathered in droves. The lingering scent of last night's incense mingled with cedar smoke rising from candles on the altar, casting a hazy halo. From the plaza's tree-lined edges, the faint trickle of a stream echoed, as if striving to quell the swelling turmoil. Foreign priests, adorned in resplendent robes, amulets strung across wrists and collars, strode into the crowd with ostentatious authority. Drums and cymbals thundered, flutes wove a mystical chant. Sporadic shouts of righteous fury punctuated the air. They demanded a public trial with Elizabeth and Miriam at its heart. The two courageous women who dared expose their lies were branded betrayers of faith. The priests, masters of manipulating mobs, raised ancient scrolls, declaring them sowers of discord, enemies of religion, and threats to the sacred order they'd long upheld. Under the flickering glow of lanterns strung across the plaza, thousands of women's eyes blazed with anguish and rage. They surged forward, growling and jeering. Many bore haggard faces, eyes red from sleepless nights spent preparing for late prayers. Now, hearing the priest's venomous accusations, those eyes turned icy like daggers aimed at Miriam's heart. The widow's heart trembled in her threadbare dress, yet deep within, the memory of her dream's radiant flame flared, urging her to stand firm. That dream, a blazing light guiding through darkness, now blew through her like a gentle breeze, fueling her waning strength. Elizabeth, watching quietly behind Miriam, sensed an odd breeze, as if heralding something extraordinary. She knew this moment was more than a human clash. It was a battle between truth and deceit, between the light of God's promise and the shadow of delusion entrenched too long. Glancing at the vast sky, she saw silver clouds part, revealing a faint sliver of light, a divine sign foretelling a miracle before all. As the trial was declared open, the crowd fixed their eyes on a makeshift stage in the plaza's heart. Elizabeth and Miriam were led forth, ascending two high steps. Lantern light traced paths, casting their shadows on the mottled stone, exuding defiance. Miriam's heart pounded through her thin garment, sweat dotting her brow. She'd shed not just her widow's veil, but a false faith nurtured for too long. Now, facing thousands of hostile eyes and growls, she felt utterly alone in a sea of wrath. When the priests spoke, their voices steely, branding Elizabeth and Miriam as sinister dividers, the crowd roared with slurs and scorn. They glared, baying for punishment, the air thick with fury like a storm churning over the cold stone. In that moment, Miriam closed her eyes, recalling her dream's radiant flame, the soft whisper, "Return." She felt its fire pulse through her veins, reigniting her dormant courage. Her breath slowed, each inhale steadying her trembling frame against the crowd's venomous stares. The jeers persisted, but a sudden mighty gust tore through, ripping tents from the temple's edge and scattering dry leaves. The Tammuz banner at the plaza's center flailed in the fierce wind, then crashed to the ground with a clatter. The towering idol, long unshaken, swayed, its pedestal quaking as if to collapse. The crowd gasped, their clamor drained, yielding a chilling silence. Faces froze, some gaped, others shielded their eyes, as if witnessing something beyond comprehension. In that instant, Elizabeth, eyes alight with conviction, stepped forward. She drew every gaze to the soul's inner flame, where true faith awaited. Without a word, a gentle nod seemed to open a new door for yearning hearts. Lantern's faint glow lit her face, her eyes shining like candles ablaze in a quiet night. Her presence declared, "Truth endures, though darkness reigns." The crowd stilled, swept by an unseen force as the parched air bloomed with hope. Miriam beside her stepped into the fray. Under moonlight's silver sheen and dim lanterns, her form shimmered ethereally. Though fear lingered, she raised her hand, brandishing the ledger of proof. It wasn't mere parchment, but irrefutable evidence of the priest's greed and lies, those who'd exploited divine authority for profit. As the crowd reeled, Miriam focused, eyes shut, reliving lonely nights, silent prayers by the stream, and the resolve surging within. Seconds stretched like a dream until she opened her eyes, her gaze fervent yet firm. All eyes locked on the ledger, its scrawled lines detailing sums of gold and silver, their division, and the profiteers' names. The crowd's fury faltered, giving way to stunned silence, as if their tears turned to dew on withered leaves. Shouts for execution faded into regretful sighs, a swell of repentance rising from deep within. Women clasped hands, torn between anger and awe, searching their souls for peace. They glanced at the fallen Tammuz idol, then, with softened eyes, turned to Miriam and Elizabeth, eyes of the awakened. As if by divine spark, the plaza's candles flared brighter than ever. A warm, strange breeze dispelled the chill, ushering an uncanny calm. Jerusalem, once echoing with wails, grew still, awaiting a sacred blessing. The temple, once a haven of hollow cries and false rites, now brimmed with praises, resounding with hymns to the Creator. Gone was the priest's oppressive sway. In its place, the gentle might of truth kindled by courage. Miriam's eyes, no longer shadowed by sorrow, gleamed with hope. She surveyed the scene, where women once bowed to Tammuz now knelt before God, hearts serene. Their sighs carried no malice, only remorse healed by mercy. Trembling hands pressed to chests, then bowed low, reclaiming lost peace. Tears rolled down Miriam's cheeks, not of grief, but joy for a soul touched by true grace. In that moment, light flooded the plaza, gilding ancient stones and carved pillars. A soft breeze swept away the jeer's echo, replaced by soaring chants. The women's hymns, once burdened by loss, wove a song of salvation. Elizabeth's gaze met Miriam's, affirming all was restored. Love and true faith now reigned, supplanting deceit and greed. Here, Jerusalem marked a monumental turning point, not with swords or violence, but through faith and courage, upholding truth. Sacred justice emerged, not with fanfare, but with quiet power to dissolve centuries of darkness. The foreign priests, stripped of authority, slunk away, leaving behind their hollow rituals' ruins. Miriam, once a silent mourner in the temple, became a radiant beacon for countless women. Her stand before the crowd, sharing proof and unyielding faith, etched deeply in every witness's heart. No longer a symbol of despair, she embodied awakening and hope. Amid a once-lost throng, she sowed seeds of belief that anyone could find true light, no matter how long they'd wandered. After the trial, news of the temple's miracle spread through the city. Tales told of the strange wind toppling Tammuz's idol, the light bursting as Miriam raised her proof, and thousands of hearts stirring awake. People from nearby regions flocked to see the marvel or seek a spark of hope for their lives. It proved true faith was the firmest foundation, not lifeless names or idols. Miriam and Elizabeth's story soon became legend across Israel, then sailed to distant lands. Tokens bearing their image, two women amid a radiant crowd, were cherished in believers' homes, relics of the miracle. Young women today, hearing the tale, weep, for it testifies to faith encourages immeasurable power. They see Miriam, once broken by loss, now a flower blooming in a barren desert, and know anyone, however frail, can ignite faith's flame, banishing darkness. As dusk fell, gilding trees and temple roofs all seemed poised for a new beginning. The temple, once heavy with mournful cries, became a bastion of praise and triumph. Miriam and Elizabeth, silhouetted in the plaza, embraced, tears falling not for parting, but for brimming joy. They knew the journey stretched far, but today they'd scaled the peak of a miracle, forged from faith, resolve, and the boundless love of the Most High. The lessons of that momentous day endure in every Jerusalem woman's heart. No soul can be traded for nothingness. Truth, however buried, will rise to break every chain, and grace awaits those brave enough to awaken and return. As night descended, the plaza shed its clamor, cloaked in spreading peace, like a warm blanket soothing yearning hearts. Jerusalem reclaimed its sanctity, not just for ancient walls, but for souls wielding faith's torch, illuminating each other on the path to their sacred source. Since that miraculous day in the Temple Plaza, Miriam was reborn, rising as a vivid symbol of faith and courage. No longer the shadow of a forlorn widow, she became a radiant torch piercing the gloom that once cloaked Jerusalem. Eyes once weary, hearts broken by loss, now pulsed with new life. Ignited by Miriam's guiding light, she not only led her own heart from the darkness of false belief, but fanned hope's wings for women everywhere. Those who'd knelt withered before Tammuz's idol, shackled by despair when faith turned to chains. Miriam's first steps on the long road to restoration were far from smooth. After that day, the plaza still echoed with hundreds of women's prayers, but their tone had shifted from wails to triumphant hymns. In the months that followed, Miriam quietly roamed Israel, carrying the ledger that exposed the foreign priest's sinister schemes. She didn't shout or wield a whip. She simply shared her story of losing her husband, of superstition's pull into error, and of standing firm before an enraged crowd. Each word dripped with sincerity, touching listeners' hearts, spurring many women to rise alongside her. In the wake of the miracle, the temple's spell began to break. People came not to offer mindless sacrifices, but to thank God for grace that reshaped their destinies. Once more incense swirled, but now it draped like a gentle cloak over hearts caring for one another. Chants softened into a hopeful anthem, each prayer a heartfelt plea to the one Creator, not lifeless idols. The temple steps, once wet with errant tears, now lay dry, lining a path shaded by green oaks, where women, young mothers and widows, held hands, gazing at Tammuz's shattered idol, a defiant end to superstition's reign. Elizabeth, the true prophetess in quiet strength, walked beside Miriam, smiling softly as she saw once fragile women unleash hidden power. She sought no applause or glory. Instead, she gave deep thanks that God chose her and Miriam as conduits for divine justice across Israel. The tales she'd shared of Deborah's bold leadership, Hagar's steadfast solace amid darkness, and other brave women of Scripture were no longer ancient relics, but blazing sparks, kindling belief that through trials, unwavering faith in the Most High could prevail. The temple, once heavy with grief's creeds, transformed vibrantly. Its ancient stone gates ceased spreading fear, becoming emblems of renewal. Sacred spaces were reordered for songs of life, preparing rooms for prayers that lifted women from shame, helping them reclaim their essence. Each dawn, as sunlight banished the dark, the courtyards sang with soft hymns, blending with bird song, weaving a harmony of faith and peace. The untold story of Miriam and Elizabeth didn't halt within ancient Israel's borders. Women shared their tale of self-rescue and saving others in homes and alleys. They taught daughters to shun fleeting promises, to cherish honor, uphold true faith, and hold fast in hardship. Amid city clamor, quiet houses glowed with warmth. Miriam's image etched on walls, a reminder, no one is forsaken as long as we awaken and seek our source. Over time, many women who had bowed to Tammuz found solace in God. They reshaped their minds, realizing joy wasn't in chasing miracles, but in nurturing steadfast faith, living in harmony with others. Lives once tethered to stone idols learned to offer themselves to timeless values: fidelity, love, quiet sacrifice. The stream by the temple, a silent witness to change, saw Miriam return often. She'd release white blossoms into its waters, praying for her husband's soul to rest, thanking divine justice for calling her back. The clear current, tinged with nostalgia, brimmed with hope. Mothers brought children to hear its murmur, teaching them to sift truth from life's chaos. The next harvest brought golden wheat. Families offered rice and fruits at the temple, grateful not just for bounty, but for spirits revived to treasure life. Through time, from Elizabeth's first call to the trial's triumph, Jerusalem shone as a land of grace. Despite history's storms, Miriam and Elizabeth's miracle endured across generations. Their story wasn't just etched in scripture, but shared by candlelight on long nights, warming countless hearts. Soon, Miriam's name reached far-off America. Sermons, videos, and online posts retold Jerusalem's marvel, awakening believers worldwide. They saw themselves in a woman who strayed, yet dared step onto justice's stage, stirring slumbering souls. Grace never vanishes, even when we wander in temptation's haze. Women like Miriam in Scripture inspire through faith's strength and redemption's promise. Each step towards self-discovery proves the unseen power of God, arms open for wayward souls. Wherever you are, however often you've stumbled, Miriam's story teaches that facing truth with courage unveils the path from suffering's dark. In today's world rife with doubt and lures, this message is a precious reminder. Amid fleeting promises, from wealth to fame, Jerusalem's miracle mirrors where true wonders lie. Inner peace, spiritual solace, genuine love. These outlast any treasure. Like Miriam, we may stray, plunge into despair, but one moment of awakening, one bold choice, reveals the way back to waiting grace. Believe that no matter how far you've roamed, how many hollow idols you've trusted, a hand awaits your return. In Miriam's tale, though she felt a false faith, she was called to true light. This isn't just for an ancient widow, but for every woman today in Michigan, California, or New York. Her powerful message reminds us we're never alone. Grace lingers for the moment we pause, face truth, and shed darkness. As you watch this video, linger on Miriam's story. Do you see yourself in it? Have you faced loss or despair, clinging to fleeting hopes? Have you hidden in shadows, chasing false miracles instead of true redemption? If so, ask, am I ready to release illusions, confront truth, and seek faith's light? Miriam's journey shows that awakening saves not just ourselves, but opens hope for others. Her embrace with Elizabeth, tears of joy for touching true grace, proves love and loyalty to God dissolve doubt. Her story isn't just an ancient legend, but a vibrant spark for women everywhere, especially American viewers facing modern life's pressures and material temptations. If Miriam's tale stirs your heart, if you glimpse light in your own life, don't hesitate to share. Hit subscribe to follow more untold stories of biblical women, tale brimming with miracles, inspiration, and humanity. Share this video with friends and family across the U.S., letting them reflect on faith and courage's power. Leave a comment below. What did you learn from Miriam's journey? How will you apply her message to your life? Join us next time as we uncover more hidden chapters, stories igniting hope and endless inspiration. Until then, pray and trust God's blessings are with you, wherever you are, whatever trials you face on your quest for true light.